Boom. What's up, folks? We are back for week 3 of Matt Damon, talking a little Saving Private Ryan and everything involved with that. Zach is here, hidden in the dark on a couch.
I'm hugging a pillow. I'm feeling nice and cozy.
And, cozy. What makes you feel more cozy than a movie about war?
There's cozy aspects to it.
It's raining and people die constantly. I don't consider either of those
things. Some people find log cabins cozy, and I might find dead corpses cozy. That's my take.
There's so many things I could say right now, but I'm not going to say any of them. I'm going to instead welcome in our wonderful special guest and a lifelong Steven Spielberg stan. It's Mr. Mike Hanley.
Fuck yes. Glad you finally invited me on for a Spielberg movie.
I know, famously going back to the first ever month we did Tom Hanks, and we invited Mike to cover a boring ass Tom Hanks movie rather than The Terminal with the Steven Spielberg film, which is way more interesting. It's batshit insane, but way more interesting. Before we jump all the way into our discussion of Saving Private Ryan, Damon, Spielberg, and the like, let's do the last letterboxed movie. Mr. Zack Pillowman Ford.
No, I lost the pillow. I gotta get
please
back.
bring it.
I gotta keep up to bed.
Zach, monogamy, please. You don't condone cheating on pillows or leaving pillows or ditching pillows.
Yeah.
Tell us about the last thing you watched.
Okay, last thing I watched. I'm gonna get it right this time. Like the last episode where I could talk about a movie and talked about the wrong movie.
Zach is amazing. He literally picks the movie. He's like, I'm going to talk about the one that's slightly older than first, just to make sure I have things to talk about in our next epispisode. And then he goes in the episode and flips the order, like 20 seconds after saying what order he was going to do.
I'm getting old and I'm really worried about my brain. Sarah showed me an ad for a nursing home today, and honestly, like, it sounds lovely. Like, just fucking commit me.
You're like a big shuffleboard fan?
Yeah, well, I'm still sane enough to enjoy it too. Just the hanging out.
You'd be like the stud of the nursing home.
It would be fantastic. I started a film club with the other 7-year-olds.
You kind of like all the same movies in the first place.
I would whoop all their asses in shuffleboard. I mean, just know that's true.
I have a question. Is it better to say you would beat up old people at sports, or is it better to say you beat up children at sports?
No, but I've been waiting to get my 4th graders out the basketball because my 7th graders was at least slightly competitive. Now I can destroy their asses. These 4th graders have.
Are you going to dunk on 4th graders?
Yeah, actually, I tried to dunk today on the 7-foot hoop during their PE time and had a backpack on, and my feet, I'm pretty sure, lowered into the ground. Not just didn't rise, I think they sunk.
Wait,
it was very embarrassing.
You couldn't dunk on a 7-foot.
My body didn't move. I had a backpack on and it just stung me backwards.
Was there bowling balls in this backpack?
That was my computer. Carrots, my rotten carrots I eat every day for lunch.
Nice. All right, tell us about the last movie.
Okay, last movie I watched. This is that kind of episode today. Last movie I watched is new release called Together. I missed this when I had sunscreen. God damn it. Sundance Sunscreen Film Festival, baby.
That's what I should go to the Sunscreen Film Festival.
That's definitely the shitty name people give to a festival when it's so hot outside. I
also get sunburns constantly because I either don't wear it or don't apply.
Sundance in the middle of winter, so can't be Sunscreen Film Festival. Anyways, I had Sundance digital passes and it was available and I chose another movie. Maybe chose wrong. I don't remember what I picked instead, but this is a pretty lovely movie. It is about a surrogate for a single father to be. Hires someone to carry a baby for him. Ed Helms plays a single father. And the actress, who is great, and I'm forgetting her name. And I'm Googling and I'm going to keep stalling. Anyways, they start a partnership in a way.
Patty Harrison.
Really is Patty Harrison, yeah, who's a revelation in the movie. But they start a platonic relationship in a way that's truly meaningful and interestingly observed. And it's really exploring the idea of love in its platonic sense and making it as valuable as a sexual sense of love. It can still be kind of romantic in its way without the sexual attraction. and a modernized idea of what a partnership can really mean. The movie's really smart. Patty Harrison, super charming and smart, and hits the dramatic pieces great. Ed Helms is doing Ed Helms. I think because he is playing more human character, I can deal with it a little more, but he does get a little too neurotic at points where it's like irritating past a chance for you to fully like him. But I think Patty Harrison's chemistry with him is able to ground it to a way that works, because I know neither of us are really big Ed Helms guys.
Is there? He's like
what?
He's not an untalented actor, but
Yeah,
every time he's in a comedy, he's usually on the lower end or the worst part. If you go through his career, he was part of The Office and Hangover and all those things, and it's always like he's always the part you're like, I could see less of him.
Yeah, maybe he's better in these more toned down kind of indie comedies, which are my favorite movies with him. But still, he's always a big, like, one of the bigger problems. Like, I love Jeff Who Lives at Home. He's the sore spot in that movie, for sure. But same kind of thing as this. But anyways, I recommend it. It's on Hulu. But a delightful 90 minutes watch. Kind of Sundance in its best, possibly of what a Sundance like indie comedy like means.
Interesting. I have not seen this. I will admit, I saw Ed Helms and sort of was like, I could skip that. That was my take on the movie. I don't tend to enjoy him. Mike, have you seen this movie? Do you have takes on Ed Helms?
I have not seen this movie, and I do agree that Ed Helms is usually the lower end of the comedy spectrum when it comes to his roles in the bigger comedies. I haven't really seen him in any of the independent comedies, so I can't really comment on that. But like Hangover and shit, Ed Helms is not who you're thinking of.
No, really, really, really not.
Yeah. Well, who was a big fan of this? The one and only Lisa Ford, my mother. So take her recommendation.
Mama Ford, big fan of Together.
Big fan of Together. She wants to talk about it often. Okay.
It definitely does feel like a mom movie. Mike, I'm guessing your movie's gonna be a little different. What's the last thing you watched?
All right, so I'm going through 31 Days of Horror, but I'm also doing it in conjunction with the Alphabet Challenge, which every day I have to watch another horror movie that goes with the alphabet. So since it was the 6th day, I had to go with F. So I did David Cronenberg's The Fly.
Wait.
What do you do when you get to like Q or
I don't count the fucking does. God damn it. It's fucking bullshit.
I'm more
that nonsense.
Unlimited options for like X. How many X horror movies are there?
Not a lot.
X, the one that like St. Vincent, like the one all directed by females. That's
Q,
the only option.
X.
Yeah.
It's gonna be interesting.
But yeah, I love the hell out of this movie. It's in my top 100. Jeff Goldblum and Gina Davis are great, and body horror and David Cronenberg together are fucking perfection.
Yeah, I've never seen this one. It's one of those ones that, like, I realized when I was looking at horror movies for the month of October that I have seen very, very, very little of the David Cronenberg oeuvre, and so probably at some point should check at least some of his stuff out.
Oh, check that one out.
Yeah, that feels like one of the more high-end, and like a lot of 1980s horror movies was based on like a remake of some kind of 1950s, Howard Hawks thing. Zach, have you seen The Fly?
I've seen The Fly, and something I've been thinking about a lot recently is that I'm really, really into body horror, especially in movies that aren't horror movies. Because I love Starman, I talked about on the show, but the body horror elements of that I find so intriguing, of the transformation from like the alien from like little boy to Jeff Bridges. And there's another movie that was explicitly like a horror movie but has such body horror elements I'm kind of forgetting about that. Also just like really draws me to a specific movie, even like Men in Black, just like the way like Vincent D'Onofrio carries and the body horror elements of those transformations is intriguing. So I don't know why I feel like I'm not the person in how I watch movies would be someone so intrigued by watching bodies transform and be mutated into the grossest way possible. But I think there's especially the 80s and before, when it's very when it's not CGI and it's really physical and tactile,
Visceral.
Very visceral. I get so intrigued by also just thinking about like the process and how like the craft of what took place. So The Fly is great for that element. It's also just like kind of goofy in the best way possible of like the way I think Halloween movies should be. Because the one other thing I want to talk about, knowing that you're going to bring up your Halloween marathon, is I've been a little bit of like an asshole about like people need to stop watching movies about murder for Halloween. That's not what Halloween's about. Like we shouldn't be watching horror movies. Like it's supposed to be about like mischief and like magic and
Dad.
spookiness. And it's like a kid's thing, really, but it should be more whimsical. I don't know what you said. It was like, keep on rolling.
I said thanks, Dad.
Yeah. Anyways, I'm starting my dad podcast spinoff. Say me and Azrael going to do
the 5-minute grumpy dad.
Yeah. We'll do half dads and half Legos, and it's Lego Dads. That is a fucking name of a pod. Lego Dads. Got it. Okay. Moving on.
I mean, you also, speaking of body horror, you did really enjoy The Thing. So I wonder if this is
and I really like The Thing, and being that I'm like not a Halloween guy, and I did so the specific like
you're not a horror guy, to be honest.
Not a horror guy, and this is where I'm transforming my thought. That it's not that I don't think you should not watch horror movies on Halloween, but if you're going to watch horror movies, they should be ones that revolve around some kind of fantastical elements, or like monster movies, ghost movies, which is really like you're supposed to live in the ethereal universe of horror in Halloween, not watching a serial killer murder people. That's not a spooky magical thing. But I think monster movies are like The Fly, something a little more surreal to it. Yeah, is I think a good way to spend your Halloween. So you picked a good choice. When you watch some shitty ass slasher movie next, I'm going to start your whole marathon.
Okay, I'm gonna change up what I'm gonna talk about on the fly, so dodge Zach's insult. Last thing I watched was 1932's The Mummy, starring, was it Boris Karloff is the Mummy? No, he's not he's the Mummy. So kind of the basic plot of The Mummy is they find a mummy, the mummy then walks away, scares a bunch of people. We cut forward in time, and there's this person influencing a bunch of others to do stuff that is revealed to be the mummy over time. A lot of times these classic horror movies, the classic monster movies, are awesome in the fact that they are 75 to 82 minutes long. The Mummy is one where it really feels incomplete, and like they kind of forgot to write a purpose to this entire film. It's a really bare bones and kind of forgettable in a way that stuff like Dracula and the Wolfman and the Invisible Man and Frankenstein are not. They've just got like an extra layer to them. This is the first one I was just like, wow, okay, there's just really not a lot there. And I wish that they had done a little bit more building the universe, building the characters. And part of the problem may just be that there's no one in the non-monster cast. Like all the human beings are kind of boring as sin. And something that the rest of the universe has done is made so there's at least one kind of antagonist to the universal monster that kind of, helps have a clear like versus battle and kind of drives the story forward. And The Mummy is pretty forgettable beyond Boris Karloff's central performance. Yeah. Have you guys seen The Mummy?
I've seen The Mummy, and a couple years ago, and I don't remember much about it. I looked at my star rating; it's exactly the same as you gave it. That there's probably something a little slight in my memory about it. It seemed a little cheaper, and
there's not much to remember if we're being completely honest. There's not a lot of like universe building or mythology or stuff like.
And even with the mythology, it's going to just naturally be a little goofier because it's like Egyptian mummy, and architects have to find rather than. A lot of classic horror movies are revolving around like evil scientists, like Frankenstein and Invisible Man, which is, I think, it's weird to say, like more grounded plot of a scientist that turns himself invisible, but in a way, it's easier for us to connect to rather than this like weird digging up artifacts kind of story.
Yeah, Mike, have you seen this?
Yes, I'm actually a big Universal Monsters show. I love those fucking.
What's your favorite?
My favorite, Bride of Frankenstein, 100%.
I haven't seen it. My favorite's Invisible Man right now.
Invisible Man's
I
great.
liked Bride of Frankenstein. Not as much as Frankenstein. I actually like Frankenstein more. My favorite so far is Wolfman.
I mean, my
think
favorite
Wolfman's
is the
fun.
2-minute scene when Frankenstein throws the girl in the lake. It's like the funniest scene that's ever happened in a movie. I showed it to my
I get a
students
kick out
last
of it.
year, and we laughed about it for like a half hour. I did not show them the movie. I just showed Frankenstein's monsters show the girl throw a girl in the lake.
I don't know. There's argument that the scene in Bride of Frankenstein where the blind hermit guy is teaching him how to smoke and drink is one of the funniest. just this bizarre like Frankenstein's monster going drink good, smoke good. just a very goofy scene, but also a lot of fun. Let's go to our main event.
Hey, you didn't actually say your thoughts on the Mummy. So you're in the Mummy, Mike?
Oh yeah, I will agree that I do enjoy The Mummy, but it definitely is on the lower end of the rest of the main Universal monster movies, not the sequels that followed, of course, because some of the sequels are goddamn. But yeah, I still enjoy The Mummy, but I do agree that if I'm going back to watch a Universal monster movie, The Mummy is definitely lower on the list.
Yeah, it's just like the other ones built a universe that makes sense why they would do sequels, and the Mummy are like I know there's a Mummy sequel, and I sort of want to watch it almost out of morbid curiosity, be like, where the hell did you take the story? Because there's no hook to the end of the Mummy that explains where you go. Like the other ones all have a hook where you would go in the second movie, and the Mummy just doesn't have that. And maybe that's because it's
places.
And maybe that's because it happened like 5 to 10 years before the other ones, and by the time they got around to like Wolfman, they were like, we clearly know we have to set up a sequel, so we're gonna build that sequel into the first movie. Let's jump ahead. Let's do Saving Private Ryan. I'm gonna do a really, really quick and simple plot summary because this is one of the most famous movies we've talked about.
I was hoping you're just gonna like give the Wikipedia page of World War II and just give the long back history, and that'd be the plot summary. Yeah.
Let's see. I'd like to go to bed in the next 3 hours, so let's not do that. I'm going to suffice it to say that the plot of Saving Private Ryan is a sort of team up movie hunt for a single man starting on June 6th, 1944 and running like maybe 2 days after it. Does that give me a just weird look? Which is
thinking about how long it actually was. Time is so hard to track in movies. We really need to. Every movie just needs to be okay with just putting day 1, hour 1 in the corner. I need this.
I cannot imagine it is more than 1 or 2 days.
Yeah, it's about 1 or 2 days because they have the night scene. I'm trying to think if they had one.
I think it's one sleep.
They sleep in that building, and they
sleep in the building.
So.
Yeah, I think it's only 1 sleep. Because the thing about Saving Private Ryan that you forget about until you go back to it is they're not traveling very far.
No.
It seems like a lot because they're having to walk it.
Yeah. But they get like 5 battles along the way.
They get into a bunch of fights, but they go from I don't even know how far it is. How far Rommel is from Normandy.
Pull up that Google Earth, baby.
I'm doing it right now. I am. So essentially, it's the hunt for Saving Private Ryan. The story is based on a true story, slightly changed. I believe they had less or more. I think it's more brothers and less of them died or something. And it's just it's a movie that has several different genres to it. It starts out as a very traditional war film, becomes much more of a road trip, like sort of a road trip team up movie, and then culminates
in an action movie.
Yeah, there's several big action sequences. It gets dramatic for several moments, and it is bookended by what I think is kind of the problem with the movie at times.
Right?
The modern.
The more I watch it, the less I mind it. So we can have the conversation.
I'm the opposite. I just like it. The more I watch it. So the answer is that the walk from Normandy to Rommel, they're giving to me in kilometers, which is really helpful.
Should we go on a field trip and should we walk this? Why we take the pod?
It's only it's only 97 miles. It's actually not that bad.
Can easily do that.
Yeah, it's not that terrible.
3 days.
I mean, if we don't sleep or stop ever, we could do it in like 3 days. Just gotta be as disciplined
No
as
expectations for yourself there.
I mean, no, I'm just saying we gotta make sure we do boot camp first and make sure we're in moving shape. You know. All right, let's talk about what this movie signifies in Damon's career, which is that this is kind of something he becomes sort of known for, especially as you get into the 2000s and the 2010s, which is that Matt Damon will take roles, small roles, in famous directors' movies in order to work with really high-level artists. And this is kind of the first example of this, because at this point in his career, he's just landed a bunch of lead roles. He's kind of blown up as a star. And you know, he could continue to just take lead roles and lead roles only, but he gets an opportunity to work with Steven Spielberg. And, you know, he would go on to do this a lot with Soderbergh later on. But this is kind of Matt Damon likes to work with famous. Yeah, he does it with Nolan too. There's a lot of people he does this with where he's like, he's willing to bring his star power to bear for a very small role in a very famous person's movie.
But, and so I also think that there's something about, I think he likes played very integral characters to the plot and to the story. Like all those moments, those characters are very important and discussed throughout the whole movie.
Oh yes,
they're almost like MacGuffins in a way, like MacGuffin characters,
like Eurotrip.
Yeah, like Eurotrip. Sure,
it is integral to the plot.
But thinking about Private Ryan in this is a MacGuffin. Like he's a human MacGuffin. And the same thing in Interstellar. They talk about that character a lot throughout, and recently in the vaguely titled Steven Spielberg movie that I will never remember the name of.
No Sudden Move.
Thank you. No Sudden Move. Another character that's just kind of always looming in the background, and then he shows up, you know, near the end. I think there's something that's interesting about those characters, Tim, that he can like pull all the strings together at the end by being that very important plot character, even if it's not a lot of screen time.
Yeah, it's about really just coming in, and I think he's realized over time that he has an ability as an actor to sell really small moments in really limited screen time. Like there are not a lot of actors that can sell you the importance of a character, the importance of a moment in as little time as Damon does, and he does this constantly. Another example is you know, Steven Soderbergh's Unsane.
That's why he cast him.
Yeah, because he comes in and you're like instantly he knows that the audience is going to believe what he needs to sell them, and he can do it in a very limited amount of time.
I don't think casting a no-name amateur actor would work in this movie. I think you have to have someone with movie star power because this character is so important, and you have to buy why this journey mattered to save this guy. You have to really buy his own kind of sense of heroicism, in a way, nobility.
Absolutely.
Did you know this was Matt Damon month, Mike?
Yes, they did.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure I told
it's kind of a weird movie to go, we're framing this movie around Matt Damon. So
I mean, so another important person to talk about this movie is Spielberg. I think this movie features
Vin Diesel, but okay.
we'll get to some of them. I think this movie is interesting in that it showcases in some ways all of a lot of Spielberg's best qualities. And I think there are moments that also feature a couple of his, I won't say worst qualities, but sometimes the things he is a little bit too heavy-handed with at times. An example of stuff he does really well in this movie is for a movie that is nearly 3 hours long, it is expertly paced. You are shocked. Like if you watch this movie and then you just randomly look at how long into the movie, you will be wildly off if you attempted to guess it. Like you'll think you're 40 minutes in and you're actually an hour and a half in. Like it's very expertly paced. I personally, and I'll just say that I don't like the ending. I don't like the buttress of the ending in the beginning. I think that it's goofy. I think that no, it's bad. It's terrible. And I find the merge from Damon's face to the old guy face to be somewhat horrific and kind of.
That's a weird take to me.
I think it's well done. I just think as an actual look.
I was so impressed by her on this. This is the third time I've seen it in like 3 years. And I didn't see this until recently for the first time. Now, for some reason, I'm watching it all the fucking time. But second time this year. And I was just like very impressed by the visual editing of that transformation. It's like really natural. And
it's very well done. I just think it looks kind of creepy. And I don't like the buttressing. I think this movie looks so much better, or not like so much better, because it's not a massive criticism of the movie. I think the movie works better is if we open on Omaha Beach with the landing crafts
it's
going
really
in,
too sudden,
and then we end on Damon's
make the
face.
transition. That the Omaha Beach scene is so brutal that it would be harder to make the transition to what the rest of the movie is and to the sentimentality of the movie without it being framed in a sentimental way.
I disagree, because I think you don't. I think the first time you watch the movie, you don't know why there's an old man at the beginning of this movie that you thought was about a war film. I don't think it's needed, and I think it's just one of those things where if Spielberg was a little bit less sentimental, this is something that it's kind of
this movie's so sentimental though. So you just gotta like embrace those moments.
No, I like some of the sentimentality. I just think there are like the buttressing at the end and the return of the German guy at the end that finally changes Upham's entire like mentality is a little bit cheesy. Like I think the movie can be played a little bit straighter in those moments. I'm gonna let Mike defend Spielberg, or at least comment on this. What is your take on the whole like sentimentality of Spielberg? It obviously works in a lot of places,
and the book ending.
The book ending, yeah.
Yeah, for this, I think it actually works out. Like, despite me being the Spielberg show and shit like that, no, I think I agree with Zach. Is that I don't mind it at the beginning. I think you need it because of that transition to Omaha Beach and that transition from the end to back to the old man. You need that in there to give the audience some breathing room before you go to fucking Omaha Beach. If you start it on Omaha Beach, it's just right into the fucking action. They don't have time to breathe, and they don't really know. Like, of course, it's Tom Hanks. They know who to fucking follow. But as a fucking character, you're assuming that the old man is Tom Hanks. And it gives the audience a character to fucking follow throughout Omaha. As in, like, fucking Dunkirk, which I did not care for, mainly because you don't have those character moments like you do.
Don't come on this podcast and talk shit about Dunkirk.
I'm going to get kicked off the old podcast.
It's a very pro Dunkirk podcast.
Well, yes, I like the more character-driven moments in Saving Private Ryan. I think that opening and ending mesh well with it.
Mm-hmm. And I think the ending is fairly moving in a way because it brings up the main theme of the story. They take it like a little too far. I don't think that like was I a good person, even though I still find that pretty heartbreaking in a way. But
I think it's goofy, to be honest.
Push it a little too far. But still, him seeing the scene after the like earn it moment, I think is important because you kind of think about that guy's life and like, did he earn it as he's like staring at their grave? So it gives a little bit of period of reflection rather than just kind of like ending abruptly.
Honestly, I'm bring in another take here. Is Captain Miller kind of an asshole? Like he tells this like 20-year-old kid to earn his life on this thing. Like Jesus Christ, Ryan didn't ask for that.
I think I don't think he's an asshole. I think he has so much fucking pressure throughout, especially with like Edward Burns and shit. Give him shit through the beginning and end of this movie. He's consistently on his ass about the decisions he makes, that he has so much fucking pressure trying to bring his own men home and trying to bring fucking Matt Damon home, that he just fucking, it's a human moment where he just has to bring it out and just tell him he can't fucking stand doing this shit no more.
We have a very important segment. I don't want to interrupt the conversation, but my favorite segment of the show, it's called Sarah's Corner. Sarah, what do you think about Saving Private Ryan?
I thought I already had something to say about this.
No, we never talked about
that. Was Good Will Hunting.
Do you remember it? It was like 3 months ago.
Yeah, it was moving.
Moving. There we go. Sarah's words. It was a moving movie. True stories. That's all you care about.
Okay. Yeah. But I do think I've lost track of my train of thought. Yeah. No, so we disagree on the sentimentality. I think the ending, I think I understand what Spielberg is going for, but the ending to me with the Was I Good Man to me is very much in the same category as Scorsese sending a rat across the screen at the end of The Departed, where it's a little bit like, okay, we're not stupid. We understood your point. It feels a little bit, there are times I think Spielberg gets a little bit too hand-holdy with his messages. And I think that it gets, in some ways it's weird because he's such a talented filmmaker that it's like, of course everyone understood your message. Like your movie is incredibly well crafted. it's almost impossible to get to the end of the movie and not understand the message. That to me, the scene feels like tacked on in a way that I'm not sure if it's needed. I mean, it's not the worst. It's my major criticism of the film. It's not. I'm not knocking 3 stars off the movie because I don't love the opening and the ending scene. Because the Omaha Beach scene is amazing. We've talked a lot about how action is. It's important when you're doing action to establish spacing and locations and spacing in comparison to other stuff. And the Omaha Beach scene is a classic work of cinema in terms that it is, you understand where everything is, and it also does chaos, which is really hard to do, is to not only show where everything is on the battlefield, but also do chaos. A lot of times movies either get stuck in one or the other, where they're just chaos and you never know where anything is, or it's too structured, so it feels like you're watching like a simulation of some kind of medieval battle. The Omaha Beach sequence is just, it's mind-blowing how good that is and how effective it is to serve the movie.
It's more about being overwhelmed rather than lost.
Yes. Like the soldiers were.
Yeah.
And I love how he's able to introduce the majority of fucking characters you're going to follow through different interactions through that sequence alone. Like, you don't get all the private moments with all of them, but you do get a lot of the big moments with them in that scene in general, to where you know, hey, this is how this character is, this is who this character is, through just that fucking battle.
Mm-hmm. It's also weird how Spielberg is able to do a movie that is simultaneously poking fun at the ridiculousness of war, the soldiers jumping over the sides and getting dragged down because their guns are too heavy, or like the fact that people throughout the movie, they're constantly making fun of the military for dropping people over the base. Because, the thing is hilariously about D-Day is that D-Day might be the single greatest achievement of the U.S. military, and at the same time was an absolute fucking catastrophe. Yeah. They dropped paratroopers like 100 miles from where they were supposed to be. They were supposed to use aircraft to take out all these different gun emplacements all along the beaches. They missed like 90% of them. They were still like shooting all of so when the soldiers are supposed to land on the beach, the idea was that they were going to be able to go up the beach, and then that's when they were going to start engaging. They didn't realize that they were going to the door at the landing craft were going to open, and they were going to get bombed
fucking
on,
annihilated.
And you're right, they do such a good job of showing Tom Hanks is just a perfect person to put in this, in that he has this trustworthiness, and he's a patriot, he's like a hero, but he also has this I get this is stupid, but this is the only choice we have when they have to go up to the gun emplacements. There's a real honesty about, yes, this is stupid. Yes, we don't have all the people we need. This is not in the right places. We don't necessarily have all the gear we have, but we have to take them out because what else are we going to do? We don't have any other options. He's got this real everyman quality that, I think just works so effectively as the leader of the team.
And a general morality that we place upon Tom Hanks, which is sometimes unfair to place upon a person, but you always feel like his positioning is on the right side. So even when he's going forward or he's starting to lose his mind, you have some sort of trust in his general perspective as a character, because that's just something we connect with Hanks himself.
And I think it also introduces one of the best of this movie, one of the best brotherly interactions, and that's Tom Sizemore and Tom Hanks. When he shows Tom Hanks when he jumps up to be the distraction while they're going up the hill, and he jumps down, and Tom Sizemore goes, "Your mother would not be very fucking excited about that, man." He's on him the whole time because he doesn't want anything to fucking happen to him, and none of the other characters are like that with him. And it's because he's followed him throughout numerous fucking battles, as they talk about later on in the movie.
Top tier wingman, Tom Sizemore in this movie. Pretty good wingman. Yeah. I will say, not that intimidating. I know he's supposed to be this tough guy actor. He kind of just seems very teddy bearish for a soldier in this to me. I don't know why. Maybe it's just the friendliness with Hanks, but he is a really good, just good buddy, good friend in this movie.
I mean, part of this is just that he's one of the only soldier characters in the film that we see have a consistent interaction with a friend. All the other characters seem Hanks and him sort of kind of keep themselves sane in the midst of all the chaos by having this back and forth relationship. The rest of them are more isolated, and that's why you see that the impact of the war, the impact of the actual fighting and the death around them seems to impact them. It just hit them harder because they're each forced to kind of stew in their own like trauma from it. Like they don't get to have the back and forth. They get to just sit there and try to fall asleep while obviously all the trauma from landing on the beach is just kind of emerging around them.
And having him there helps humanize Hank's character too, because there's like purposely that barrier that he has with all the rest of the soldiers, because he has to maintain his professionalism as a captain. And then when you see those scenes with Sizemore, that's when you can see him as human. He's the one able to protrude that barrier and connect with him a little more deeper. Yeah, he can be that Hanks can be vulnerable with him and be real with him. And Sizemore also has my favorite moment in the movie, which is when they throw helmets at each other during the action scene. For some reason, I just fucking love that moment. There's like guns don't work, and they both just take turns on their own, just throwing their helmets at each other.
It's a good moment. I think you said the thing about Hanks and like the fact that this movie takes advantage of a lot of what we know from Hanks as an actor up to this point. This movie also takes advantage of a lot of what we know from Damon. Because the minute Damon shows up on screen, Damon is sort of the poster boy for the American soldier. He has like this all American boy next door, church going, God fearing,
loved son and brother,
red-blooded American, loves his brothers, and even just his response to everything, like the fact that him as a person, that he's told his brothers are died. He's clearly sad about that, but he's also like, I'm not taking the easy way out. This is something we see a lot of times in the Great War stories, is that you have people given the opportunity to go home, given the opportunity to leave the field of combat, and choosing to stay because they don't think it's morally right to jump the line, if just for a reason, for something for a reason you don't deserve. Kind of the famous example is, of course, John McCain refused to come back from Vietnam, even though he was an officer, because he was like, I'm not going back before the men go back. I don't get to just jump the line. And I think this kind of plays into that. It's a very American sensibility to be like, fairness matters even in moments of trauma. Like, just because my brother dies doesn't mean I get to jump the queue and leave all these people there on the beach, And it's sort of interesting that a couple years later, Spielberg would make a TV show called Band of Brothers, which is sort of what the reason that Damon stays in the first place. He's like, yes, I lost my biological brothers, but these are my brothers now. I'm not leaving the only brothers I have left.
I think it's a smaller, more universal way to connect to us that idea of military duty, to where it's not military duty to your country, but your duty to your peers in a way, and to the people you're with, your friendship, which is, I think, easier to empathize with and understand.
It's also easier to empathize when you're talking about World War II, which is such a glorified hero war, where it was like there was a clear bad guy doing something bad. The reason we got into the war is we were attacked. We were fighting against evil. There's not like some kind of it's like, it is geopolitical because it involved the entire world, but the reasons that people were fighting were not geopolitical. There wasn't really money involved in the way that, we get on, and it's a lot harder to make a movie about Vietnam or the Gulf War or Iraq or Afghanistan and be like, these people are heroic. It's like, no, we go forward 20 years and we see soldiers as part of a system that's exploiting the soldiers and not necessarily treating them the way they deserve. World War II is a war where, like, it's the war that, like, everybody joined up. Because, of course, you joined up, because why wouldn't you want to fight evil?
No, that's the just war.
Yeah, it's the just war. Why wouldn't you join up? You want to fight evil and serve alongside everybody else. It's like the ultimate, it's like the all-time high for patriotism in the U.S. It's like,
it's one of our two just wars, World War I and the War of the Worlds. We had a clear bad guy, the aliens.
And I think he definitely explores it more in Band of Brothers, of course, because he has more time, but it also explores the human moments of, like, after the Omaha Beach scene, when some of the soldiers have given up, and you just see the two soldiers walk over and just shoot both of them after they've given up. It shows that moment that they're all human, that they have some, not fucking evil, but they've seen everything that goes on. And should they be killing them at that point? No, but they still fucking do it. And you see Tom Hanks look on as that happens, and you can tell he's not that guy, which they explore later on in the movie, especially when they come up to can never think of his name, but the soldier who they potentially want to kill but end up letting go later on.
Yeah, and that's why I don't love that they bring him back kind of as this villain, and that goes a mistake really that they made, because then he comes back and kills him, and I think that violates parts of that moment that I love, because I'm kind of a sucker for war movies when there's like signs of empathy for the working soldiers on the other side. They're also just like they're defending their country, just like in a way they are in charge. And I mean, it's a horrible thing sometimes to say like, following orders does not mean you are guilty of a crime, which because in a way you still should be, but they're still like they are patriots in their own mind, and there still has to be some level of morality in play when dealing with them. So within that moment where he lets them go, I said just like I appreciate those moments. It creates a bigger picture of empathy for the other side. I think it's important, but then it gets violated by making him a villain by the end of the movie. Because I also like that moment as a sign of like when they were losing it, they were starting to defy those moral values, that just American patriotism, because they were caught in the chaos that was taking over, and it was putting that chaos in check by letting them go. And then once again, them putting in check didn't matter because the movie basically was decided that they should have killed him by the way they used that person at the end of the movie.
Well, I think that the point of the movie is that both sides are right.
Yeah.
That yes, the rules say of combat say you're not supposed to kill.
Okay, let's clarify both sides as in both sides of the argument.
I'm gonna explain.
Not that the Nazis were right.
No. No. That both sides of the fight within the squad are right. That
thank you.
Yes, Upham says you're not supposed to kill. Thanks, Zach.
No, I was saving you from canceling your.
I was about to finish it. But that Upham is saying that the rules of combat say you're not supposed to kill those who surrender.
Yeah.
But even like the movie, in like the opening sequence, they shoot the Germans in the trench at the beginning.
Yes.
The movie shoots that straight on. There's not a judgment about that because you also understand where Sizemore and what's his name? George Burns? Is that Edward Burns.
Edward Burns. Yeah, they're Ed Burns, the great director, Ed Burns.
Well, you understand where they are coming from.
My friend.
You can understand where they're coming from too, because I mean, this is the thing about war that it is so ridiculous. Especially, I mean, World War II is a great example of this, and they do this several times throughout the film. There's the moment where Hanks tells Upham to ditch all this gear because some suit in Washington says that this is the required gear you're supposed to carry doesn't mean that you actually need to carry. This is like a famous thing throughout World War II is that they kept coming up with this is the uniform requirements. This is all the gear you're supposed to do. And the soldiers would all realize, I'm not going to carry it. Like, there's like 40 pounds of crap I don't need. Like, why am I carrying around? Like, why is every soldier carrying shovels and like 30 pounds of explosives and stuff? Like, only the explosives person needs to carry that stuff. Like, and then over time they would start stripping it down and like carrying less and less. And this is also a moment where it's like, just because people in a room decided that the rules of combat say you have to keep people who surrender alive, to the actual soldiers in the battlefield, that's stupid. It's like, we're fighting a war. We have to, like, the only thing that's stopping them from killing me is killing them. Like, why would I let these people walk free? Why would I let them walk away from the situation? And I think that moment when Steamboat Willie comes back at the end is supposed to signify sort of that there is no right choice. Like, you can say that the morally right thing is to let prisoners of war survive. But at the same time, that can come back to bite you because then they can become your enemies again. That the idea that, like, in some ways, the idea of morality is ridiculous when you're fighting a war. That you can try to be moral while fighting a war, but at the same time, the only thing that matters is survival and the survival of those around you. That, like, if, it's easy to play the games and talk about the rules of combat when you're not actually fighting for your life when somebody's not trying to shoot. Yeah. Do you want to talk about the rest of the team? Let's talk about this whole team because it's a great team. It's a really, really good team. So we've got Hanks as Captain Miller. We've got Sizemore as Sergeant Horvath. Jeremy Davies joins the team as their translator / typist. Corporal Upham. Great moment when he's like, "Can I bring my typewriter?" And Hanks just gives him like, "What is wrong with you, you dummy?"
I'm looking this up before I say things, but I've always had this weird obsession with Jeremy Davies' IMDb picture. I want to make sure it's the same picture.
I'm looking this up too now. Jeremy Davies is sort of like in some ways, he is the representation of the outside at home morality. Is he's the person
Oh,
who's
yeah.
experienced less combat and thus is able to talk more about how he thinks that they should act in a moral manner, because in some ways he hasn't spent much time getting shot at.
The naive idealist. He looks so. I'm on his picture. He's wearing a hat. His hair's long. He looks like a jazz, heroin addicted jazz musician, just like a real scum bum in his
He looks
picture.
like
and then compared to the character he plays in Saving Private Ryan, I just think about this all the time. He's like in a nice suit with the scummiest ass hat and hair.
I mean, he
It's
looks
also
like
the audience's way into this group as well. Because, yeah, we do start with Tom Hanks, but the moment Upham comes in, you start learning more about the characters through his eyes. Like when they're walking and he's asking where people are from and shit, and no one wants to tell him shit. They go, ask fucking Miller. He'll tell you everything you want to know. And then you find out from Miller that they have a whole money thing going on of what he actually does and where he's from in life.
Yeah, I mean, he is the character that just doesn't shut up, because unlike the rest of them, he hasn't experienced the trauma. The other ones have probably reached the point where they're like, I'm not going to find out too much about other people, because the more I know about somebody makes it harder when I watch them die in front of me. And
But it's also like he
sheltering themselves. Well, it's that as well. But I think if you're going to be in war, you don't want to necessarily know that much, because when that person gets shot in the head next to you, you want to have separated yourself a little bit so that you can continue on in this war, because you sort of know intrinsically that just because you're a team with these people now does not mean you're going to be a team with these people in 2 days. That the turnover within these teams is very high.
And it's definitely an important part of the barriers that Hank sets, and why he doesn't tell them his profession or anything about his home life, is to keep that disconnect, because he knows that he will probably die.
I think you see it with Ribisi and Diesel. Because when Diesel gets shot, Ribisi's really the one that gets fucking affected.
Heartbreaking part of the movie,
yeah. And honestly, I don't really enjoy Vin Diesel in any movie except for this movie. Now, is it because he only survives like 10 minutes? Maybe. But I think he has an impactful part in this movie, and Spielberg uses them well. This is a perfect...
This is my... you can finish with that. My third favorite use of Vin Diesel, number 2 being Groot, and the number 1 best Vin Diesel movie is his video of him singing karaoke to Rihanna's Stay. That's the best Vin Diesel clip. I have watched that 8 times, more than the Saving Private Ryan. But yes, this is a good use of him.
The best thing about Vin Diesel in this movie is he looks like no American soldier in 1944 ever. Like, just on the basis of like the size of the average American male in 1944, Vin Diesel is just way too large.
He would have been recruited into the mob so fucking He was already Italian. He would have been like the muscle real quick.
Well, yeah, because he's
also short though, isn't he?
I don't think so. He's nearly probably twice the size of the average.
I thought he was like 5'9".
No, he's 6 feet tall.
Okay.
Look up average male height.
I thought he was one of those like notorious Napoleon complex things.
I mean, he is in that he constantly tries to play bigger than he actually is.
Yeah.
Because like you go to the Fast and Furious movies and
like a giant ass tree.
Well, he tries to pretend
take that role because he can play a giant tree.
It's true. He did do that. I mean, he's always trying to pretend that he's like the same size as The Rock in the Fast and Furious movies, even though he's like not remotely similar to him in size. All right, I'm looking this up. So they're like 20, so like 1924 heights.
You're looking at the average height of a person in 1924.
Average
really in depth with it. I like it.
Are you trying to say that me at 6'2" would have been a real player in 1924?
Would have been massive. I mean, dude, you're a freak. They literally would have made you play basketball. Yeah, the average male height in these guys would have been about an average height of about 5'6".
Oh, man, I got lifted up.
And like, let alone like, probably would have weighed 125, 130 pounds soaking wet. There's nobody Vin Diesel size, but I agree.
Many of them soaking wet. They landed on a beach.
They're definitely soaking wet. No, he's good in this. I think the biggest thing is like he's good in this, but he's also not distinctive in this, which is sort of the reason why you think he goes into different career paths. Is that I think he could have had a career like this, but I think he would have had a much more forgettable career if he'd continued to do roles like this. He would have.
Yeah.
He could have played a lot of good supporting roles in movies, but I
He's
think
been
as
a
an
character
actor, right? But he's not he's not distinctive enough to be a really memorable character actor, and
He's not
more serious movies, he's not a good enough actor to play the lead. So like, there's a reason that Vin Diesel went down the action genre, because he can create a character that kind of works with, you know, his somewhat limited skill set, I think is fair to say. We've also got Adam Goldberg, who I actually really enjoying this.
Oh yeah,
kind of having a
Fucking
moment for a
awesome.
while there. Is it weird that Adam Goldberg has been like in a lot of remembered movies? It's like just a weird looking guy.
Especially like late 90s,
This is
early
post Days and
2000s.
Confused, which is a memorable role for him and probably his breakout.
Yeah, so this is quite a while after that. It's about 3 years after Higher Learning. It's 5 years after Dazed and Confused.
I have the wrong year for Days and Confused. Yeah,
and then like, you know, he does Beautiful Mind in 2001.
His like 2 Days in Paris was like a big like leading like breakout thing for him. That was in the early 2000s.
And he also has one of the best guest appearances on that Friends show of all time. He plays a psychopathic roommate of Matthew Perry. It's fucking hilarious.
Right, he is that, yeah.
It's like a really niche career in an odd way of playing
like,
these like neurotic oddballs.
He's kept working too. Like he's the thing about him though is that he's kept working. Just none of his credits are memorable. Like, you know, 2 Days in Paris and Zodiac in 2007 is basically the last time you'd recognize any of his movie credits. And then, you know, even like his TV credits, you know, has relatively minor ones even up to now. But he's really enjoyable in this. And I think Spielberg somewhat intentionally picks actors who are having a moment, but maybe I think he's intentionally not casting the most famous people. I think if Spielberg wanted to have a really famous team, he could have cast like this movie could have been Damon as Private Ryan and like Norton Pitt, you know, that level of guys.
Cast real looking people. They're all people that look like humans, like people in New York City.
That's a fair way to put it.
Yeah, they look. Yeah, you're right. You're right. I mean, Giovanni.
Even Vin Diesel, like who looks. Some people can find him very attractive because they're into that kind of like machoism, but
testicle.
He's not like technically like
beautiful. He looks like a testicle.
As a man. He looks like a man that you could know, honestly. Just that you're also worried that what drugs he's taken for his body, but you know him.
Yeah. I bet he.
You want to tell us about Vin Diesel's fitness routine? Do you want this for the next half hour?
Speaking of the drug thing, the Tom Sizemore casting is interesting. That this was during the time where he was heavily involved in drugs, and Spielberg approached him and went, "I really want you for this role, but there will be no fucking drugs. You're not going to go off and get high. You're not going to go fucking take," I think it was heroin he was doing as well. You know, if you do any of that, you're fucking out. I will fire you right away. So it was his first, I think it was his first.
Pretty naive of Steven Spielberg in a way. Like, don't get a heroin act and think they're not going to do heroin. But
well, he did actually clean up after this too. It kind of was kind of like the Robert Downey Jr. moment, except for the fact that in like 2 years, I think he went back to doing it. But he did clean up for like 2 years because of this role.
He literally had his marriage basically collapsed a year later because of his heroin use, which has been since he was like 15. I will say, I don't want to talk more about Tom Sizemore because I'm reading his just ridiculous rap sheet on his Wikipedia page.
That life. I still like the performance.
Supposedly, Robert De Niro made him get sober in 2013. But yeah, he has a list of not only drug-related incidents, but also sexual abuse and domestic violence problems. Along with like, seemed like he might have been out of his mind and said a lot of just truly crazy shit. Yeah, but no, he has a really high-level career in war movies. You know, he does this and Black Hawk Down 3 years apart. He very much he has a real like. It's not surprising. It's a real staff sergeant kind of like.
Yeah,
he's not young enough to play a private, but he's definitely one of those like more grizzled, but not necessarily like the best. He hasn't risen up the rank, but he's just kind of the older dude there. But he's not the captain. He's the sergeant for a reason. Let's see. Who else we got in this movie?
Barry Pepper.
You said Ed Burns.
I love Barry
Ed Burns was a very interesting moment too, because he was like this indie guy. He, had Brothers McMullen before this. He was this hot shot, like the next Woody Allen. He was being touted as at the time in the mid '90s, of being like the indie voice of this generation. And then Spielberg's like, yeah, let's cast him in like my big movie. Is like out of him just doing his own shit. He didn't. I don't know if there's any other big Hollywood movies before this for him, right?
This is literally his first acting credit that he's not also completely directing, producing, and screenwriting.
Yeah. That's interesting. He worked his way into being in a Spielberg movie.
Yeah, I mean, this is a very Spielberg thing. Is like he spent a lot of his life being like kind of picking and choosing among all the young up and comers and being like, I'm going to kind of give them the shine of, I think this person is more than what we think of them as. And he's constantly picking people before they blow up. Mark Rylance is probably the most recent example of this. Is like he sort of plucked him from BBC and theater
From, like,
obscurity,
critical acclaim to something more mainstream,
and be like, I'm going to make him the lead of my movie. I love Barry Pepper. Barry Pepper he's just fun. I mean, who doesn't love Barry? Barry Pepper's a really good actor in war movies because he just has a look. He doesn't look like anyone else.
This is the character he looks like a psychotic Jesus freak sniper. Yeah. The way I see him in Green Mile, and he's like a little more empathetic and human. I still don't fucking trust him. Like I know, because that's just the way he looks.
Yeah, he has a real like. The fact that it's also like he's weirdly good at it to the point where like the fact that he's quoting, like he's like, doing these like prayers while he's shooting people could be a moment that in a lesser director, lesser actor, lesser writer's hand is really goofy and stupid. And like people walk out
or
and it's like
villainous and someone you hate, which is not this character.
I think the framing of him as part of the team would never allow it to come up as villainous, but I think it could come up as really just goofy and kind of dumb if this was not done as well. And I think in fact he's really effective and has one of the real showstopper deaths in this movie is the end of the film when that was going on, and the fact that they show him shooting and they cut away and then they show the tank turning at him and blowing it up and you don't get to see him die but what happens. It's just a very, very effective scene.
And I do like the human moment he has there where he knows he's fucked, so he tells the dude next to him basically to try to fucking run before he explodes. The dude still dies, but his first instinct was to tell the other guy, get the fuck out of here. It wasn't for him to like duck or fucking jump. It was turning to that guy going, run before we explode.
Maybe even more than his like religion, his like defining characteristic is competence as a soldier. Like he is seen as a really highly competent, probably the most competent soldier like on the team, and that's a big aspect. That his soldier instinct is to tell his team to take cover.
Got that little bit of crazy that kind of makes a really good soldier in that moment, and a little bit of crazy to the point where like he doesn't think of his own life, which I guess to be a soldier in the middle of a battle, you sort of have to have this ability to stop focusing on your own potential doom.
Yeah,
because if you're focused on that, you're not really going to get anything else done. And he's like super focused on just his sniping ability and is clearly seen to be a truly excellent sniper throughout the film.
Is there any of the people that they like meet along the way we want to talk to?
I will say some of the
there's
ones,
a lot of interesting faces. The big thing of like war movies is that like just one scene rolls by like famous actors as you just journey through your path. Because like,
what's your favorite one?
Well, my favorite is very biased.
All right, well, give us your favorite one anyway.
Which is I'm blanking is Gary Bertier. I don't know his real name.
Ryan Hurst.
Thank you. There's always Gary Bertier in my mind, and I like him because he's Gary Bertier.
Paratrooper Mendelsohn.
Yeah. Okay. And so for some reason, I like that was like the start of me when I see this movie. It's like, yeah, Gary Bertier, that's my guy. Because I watched Remember Titans 30 times before I saw Saving Private Ryan for the first time. But it's just like it's like a really funny role in a moment that's also very important to the plot. Like he's the one who knows Matt Damon's, whereabouts as his friend, but and it's still kind of tragic too because he can't hear.
So he has to scream everything.
So he has to scream everything to him and like start writing it down, and just the straight faceness that he can play, like the can't hearness, that makes it tragic, but also there's the humor in it is like not lost in a dark way. I really just enjoy that scene and enjoyed the performance that he brings it. Gary Buttier also not in the good looking way that Matt Damon has. It has a very all-American. Like you see him as a guy that would be in World War II in the 40s.
The fact that he goes on to play the captain who kind of is tasked with integrating the football team together is unsurprising considering the look he also brings to this film.
Yeah,
Mike, do you have a favorite one?
He's my favorite.
Do you have a favorite of the cameos?
Oh, Paul Giamatti, 100%.
It's probably the best performance of the one. Yeah,
he's fucking great in it, especially when he's telling Obese to get down when Obese's trying to go for Vin Diesel. He's going, "Get down! What's the matter with you?" He just he has that military aspect, leadership to him. Because he is playing a sergeant, I believe.
Yep.
And he's just fucking great in it. It's such a great cameo for him.
And it's very much like. He's the person who's a little bit more beaten down than Hanks is at this point. He's kind of realized that a lot of this is, he's very much Hanks is internally feeling it and then not spewing it to soldiers. And Giamatti is much more lines like, yes, this is really stupid. Everyone who is above me is stupid. And I'm just going to tell everyone around me, even if they're like the private, which is not really good command movements, but I'm going to do it anyway.
He's griping, even though he's not supposed to gripe to lower ranked people. He still gripes.
Absolutely. Two really important ones. A good moment in the movie, and very much like the Spielberg touch, is the fact that Nathan Fillion plays the Minnesota James Ryan.
That seems so awkward and so devastating to me.
I mean, I think that what is actually so effective because Fillion has the actual response, he's scared about his siblings. Yes. And then Tom Hanks has this moment of are you fucking kidding me? There's two of these guys. They didn't tell me which one I was looking for. Nobody told me this. Nobody told me there was two of these people that I'm trying to hunt down. And he's just oh my. And even the end where the guy's crying about his brothers and Hanks is just oh Jesus, I have to go find the other one now. He thought that he'd completed this stupid mission he was given for his team. And then he realizes, crap, there's two of these guys.
And you finally get the reactions out of Burns and shit that you've been looking for throughout this, which is they kind of feel bad when he starts breaking down, but then you find out that it's the wrong fucking guy. And I go, jeez, the fucking emotional part's just gone. Go, fuck this guy.
But I also still feel bad because they do a good job at he can't recover from that because there's still so much of that nerves and chaos of war that once he hears these horrible news, he still can't get past it. Even once he knows it's not real, he's I need to go home.
He wants to go home.
He's just broken. Just that idea of it broke him.
It's also so important because it allows us when we meet Damon later that his response being smaller is not crazy because we've already seen the first person break down and have the big emotional response. Yeah. So when Damon has this really small emotional response and it's fuck it, I'm not leaving, it works in the film because it would have been weirder if he'd been the first one. And then you get this moment and you've been okay, is this guy crazy? I will also say I like Dennis Farina as the guy who gives Hanks the orders in the beginning. Just a real I believe the story is Farina was actually a Chicago cop before he went into acting. And he has that real just grizzled doesn't give a crap. Yeah, he was a former military officer. He was a police officer for 20 plus years or something. Just a real no nonsense, no crap. He just kind of gives Hanks very much the top officer who knows this is a really stupid thing he has to deal with. He's he's trying to coordinate the actual taking of a country. And, some jackass in Washington sent him a letter being you need to go find this one soldier that's somewhere. We don't really know where. And he just passes it off to Hanks. He's please don't fucking talk to me about this again. I don't want to have to deal with this. He's shifting the buck to Hanks because he just wants to get rid of this annoying, task that he's been dumped on.
Ted Danson's one always catches me off guard. I just forget he's in it. It seems weird. It's a weird casting.
I forgot Bryan Cranston was the one-armed guy in Washington.
Was that right at the beginning of Malcolm in the Middle? 97.
This is roughly about the time that he starts.
He had nothing really before that.
No, he's done Seinfeld at this point.
Oh, okay.
But this is the weird thing that I think that you always forget about Cranston is that he is somebody who was in the current modern era so defined by a TV show like Breaking Bad that you forget for a massive amount of his career, probably the majority of his career, he was that annoying like comedy character, like where every one of his characters' goal was just to be like he did it on several major TV shows where his goal was just to be the really annoying guy that the main characters of the show just wanted to fuck off. It was like, please go away at this point. And he's very good at them. He's very good at doing it. It's just very weird that, like now he just completely kind of changed the trajectory of his career.
Think he's one of our best dramatic actors of the day. He wrote in a bathtub.
I know. It's like just taking a shot at Trumbo. I like Trumbo. Stop shooting him.
Of course.
Really,
Trumbo.
Really good in Last Flag Flying. We're going to speak about more movies. Yeah, it's sort of the main cast. Let's see. What else do we have to talk about?
I would talk a little bit about like some set pieces because we talked about D-Day specifically, and I'm one of the ones that I think I prefer the last half hour because it really is bookended by 2 half-hour long action pieces. I think the last one's like 40 minutes. I try to time it. It's longer by like 10 minutes than D-Day is. In a way, and I prefer that in a way that maybe says a lot about me as a viewer because it is much more Hollywoodized than D-Day. It is shot more as like a action scene, a little more. Romance not the right word, but it's a little more thrilling in a way that's traditional with how action movies are. That makes it easier to digest. Probably why I like it, but I do think anyone who says Saving Private Ryan is good for the first half hour and then it gets bad are psychos. Like you're insane. Like you like the part where everyone's in chaos and dies and murders, and then don't want anything else to come with it. That's by
far the most impressive part, though.
It's by far
the most.
It's the only good part.
No, I'm not going to say that, but I think
it's meaningless without anything else.
No, I agree. It's not a functional film if you don't have the later parts, but I can understand why. I think that opening like 20 minutes is probably the most memorable sequence in the film because it's the sequence that they had to accurately represent to the factual events. When by the time they get to the final battle sequence, they're not recreating a real battle. Like there was a battle at Rommel. They're not recreating the real battle. They're making it up. They're it's allowing Spielberg to shoot whatever set piece he wants.
Good.
No, I'm not saying it's bad, but like I think that what people come out of the reason talking about the opening D-Day sequences, that they were intentionally trying to recreate a real battle that we know happened, how we know it happened, and like even like the specific maneuvers and the specific failures and like problems they had to work with. Like it's very much trying to evoke an actual event, which I think is always going to come off more impressive than just you made up an action sequence in a town with your team.
It's impressive, but I always wonder if it's like really necessary. It always seems kind of like a little too brutal and too much for the movie trying to be. I think I can forgive it because the movie's so sentimental otherwise that it creates like a purpose for that scene. That's not brutality for brutality's sake. As far as making you witness it, but sometimes I think trying to like observe war, defies that still movie, and that movie.
Looks like we may have lost Zach.
I forget. I think I'm still okay.
You crapped out for a second. You're back now.
So, and there's like a famous quote, but I think it's Truffaut that was like, all war movies are romanticized, no matter what. Like what you put on the camera, it's romanticized. So sometimes I feel like you just got to own that. And so when you think you're observing the realities of war, like the D-Day scene is, you're like denying the fact that it is a movie and that you're naturally going to have it's going to come off as entertaining to where it almost seems gratuitous in a way to me. And exploiting those, and I said I'm not like hating on the scene, but it just makes me a little more uncomfortable to when it can be a little more classical in its sense of war scenes, which is the end is very kind of like Bridge over the river.
We're losing him again, I think. I will partially push back on some of that and say that I think that for me, why I dislike the buttresses at the end of the beginning is that I think that that's too much of the sentimentality. And I think that's a fact. I think you have to have the brutality at the beginning for the sentimentality to work. Because I think otherwise, if you don't have the beginning, you have to have the like unglorious, unfun part of war for much of it to make the entire mission function. I think you have to understand why the soldiers think this is so stupid and so pointless. And I think that what Spielberg does is he has to have the like brutality at the beginning so that gives him the license to play with the more sentimental, more more emotional aspects at the end. Like I think that they're so tied together. Like I would cut out the flash forward and flash, like the stuff in the future, but I don't think I can cut out of either the sentimentality or like the brutality of the two wars. And in fact, I think I actually wish the movie started on the brutality because I think that
because you're a psycho.
No, because I think that's a more effective film. I think if you're forced to confront that head on and then go from there, I think the movie is.
Yeah, you just want to watch the bodies hit the dirt floor. You want them to play drowning pool over the D-Day sequence.
Wow, just ridiculous, just slander at this point. Before we
I will give you $1 million if you know who Drowning Pool is. You know nothing about music. It's not by Beethoven. It's not a Beethoven thing.
I'm not the biggest Beethoven guy. I don't know why we always equating Beethoven.
No. It's the only classical musician I can name.
I think you just embarrassed yourself more than any of the statements you said about
we had a
me.
very nice conversation about Vivaldi the other day. So
I do like to dig a nice Vivaldi. I will say, before we jump all the way to the battle sequence at the end, I do think that the moment they meet Ryan is such an effective sequence and takes advantage of Damon's star power. Just the fact that they're walking through a field and they have this such nonchalant meeting where like a tank gets blown up and these three soldiers come out and it's literally just like, I'm this guy and I'm this and I'm, PFC, I'm PFC Ryan. And he goes, James Francis, right? Like just that moment only works because you have just two absolute megastars and Hanks and Damon doing that moment.
Yeah.
Like the fact that you cast these famous people means that you don't have to go and write like some big expansive sequence where like they meet up and it gives a bunch of information and it's like a big exposition dump. Like they can just the simplicity of that scene is what makes it really effective and also very funny because Damon has like the perfect look for the soldier and just the moment when Hanks like literally quotes his entire name and he's like, what are you talking? Just like that moment, the confusion in that moment is I think really cute and it's like it's such a Damon move from like the late 90s to just be like the cutest guy ever and it's like, oh, dude, James Francis, right? And he's like, how do you know my name?
How did you know?
Such an effective sequence.
Was the 1940s the peak point of using your middle name, the importance of your middle name? It's so valuable, this movie. Middle names have never been as important.
I think it's only because his name otherwise is literally James Ryan. Yeah. And there's probably like 60 PFC
and they already fucked
James
it up
Ryan.
Once with James Ryan.
Yeah, I think at the end,
Francis Ryan's Francis is a real Catholic name. That's probably everyone's middle name. Every Irish Catholic's middle name.
I think there's a reason by the end Hank said, "You're James Francis Ryan of Iowa," and then just really hoping really badly that there's not a second James Francis Ryan
town in Iowa with three brothers, and you went to the school with this teacher, and you really like cats.
Yeah, I think that's such an incredible sequence. Zach, you wanted to talk about the ending fight scene?
Yeah, I mean, I want to make the comparison, so I kind of made that, but I do find it very enjoyable. That one is, I think the geography of it is very smart. You always know everything that's happening. They use details within it to make you knowledgeable, because like having Barry Pepper in the tower to like tell you when tanks are coming helps, like gives you visual information without actually seeing it, so you know what to expect with who's coming in with the tanks, and that is a smart way to orate that information. And they have the right level. I mean, I already said I kind of hate the Steamboat Willie, whatever it's called, Mickey Mouse shit guy.
Steamboat Willie, yeah.
Thank you. I hate that aspect of that set piece. But
it's a little goofy to call back to the character. Like he could have just been a random German.
Yeah. But I do appreciate the use of all the characters and conclusions to their kind of arcs in that way. throughout the scene. They give a lot of time to each character to because they know that you've grown to bond with them, and you want to see what they have to offer in this battle and where they kind of end up by the end of it. And the humor in it, you said he's kind of an asshole. It's I think honestly really important and really moving, and that's the thematic purpose of this movie is like, what's the value of one life, or the value of your mission, your hero.
I'm just saying they're laying a lot of stuff on a 20-year-old dude who didn't ask for this.
But he also probably feels that anyways. Even if he didn't say it, he can feel that he always knows these people came to save him. I say it to all my students as they leave me the next year, and I say, earn this.
I will say, I think
die in front of them.
The important reason that the end scene was fun is it takes advantage of a classical fight scenario, which is it is always enjoyable, whether it's a war movie or a Western, to put people in a situation where they have potentially limited supplies, limited ammunition, and then they have to start. I think everyone as an audience enjoys there's a term I'm looking for that I can't. Just like the fact that they don't have all the correct things they need to do, so they have to improvise. Like the improvisation of being like, oh, we have a bunch of this explosive, let's put it in socks and like throw it at the tank and try to blow them up that way. And we have to. Oh, we don't have any. We don't have the wood. What?
Blowing up the tanks with those handmade bombs.
It's great.
Cool.
It's great. It's also we don't have the mortar thing doesn't work anymore. So if we bang them on it, it'll use them. We can throw them. Is really effective. And even the fact that they do the sequence with the socks and the explosives, and they even test it out. And the one guy runs out and he holds onto it and he just blows up. Like just the ridiculousness of being like, not only like the opening scene was ridiculous because all the other stuff that was supposed to happen didn't happen. So that when they were supposed to do their part, they were asked to do more than what. And by the end, the ridiculousness is you have to hold this bridge so that we can get tanks through, because bridges are like vital at this point, because the only way you get tanks through all over France, the only way basically you get a tank from the coast to potentially Germany, that's the goal. And the idea that they're like literally like smacking mortar rounds on a piece of brick to arm them and throw them at other people just like is, a fun and enjoyable sequence. And just like the ridiculousness of war is like people having to make explosives with socks. Like they all don't have socks.
Yeah.
Just a fun sequence.
Also, the stakes are very clear. The like physical stakes and the emotional stakes, and the way they think about it, like protecting the bridge, very understandable. They explain it to the right level to like what they're doing and why they're there. But then the emotional stakes for each character is also clear, and I love the I'm going to let you fight Ryan, but you got to stay by my side. So there's that extra emotional stakes of like I'm still going to try to like protect my mission to like keep you safe.
Yeah. I will also say the moment where Damon tells the story about his brothers is really funny.
Such an asshole story.
It's a great story, and this is another example of taking advantage of Damon's unique approachability and likability that is just intrinsic to him as a person. Is that story is not on the whole a funny story, but it is funny because Matt Damon is a really attractive, cute guy in the late 90s, and when he laughs at it, you as a viewer are like, oh, it must be hilarious because Matt Damon is laughing the way he's laughing at it. And then also it leads to a great moment when like he tries to get Hanks to tell him the story of the rose bushes, and Hanks just has this really quiet moment of like, no, that's just for me. And just kind of explains how the officers and the enlisted guys have to live differently through the war. Like the officers have to remain separate because it's the only way they can functionally do their jobs. And while the enlisted guys, like the privates, sort of create a brotherhood among themselves the way that Damon would with his brothers from back home.
You go. I've talked a lot.
That's like, I love the Homa Beach scene, but the Damon little story and then the Vabisi story when they're sleeping and he's talking about how when his mom would come home, he would try to stay awake at times when he really wanted, but then he would fall asleep. But then other times she would come in and he would pretend he would be sleeping so he wouldn't have to talk to her. And I love those little emotional beats there from both of them. I think it works both on Damon's side because it humanizes him with that story, and with BC where they're fucking terrified of the war, especially with BC's character. He doesn't want to fucking be there. None of them do, but they have to be. And you get those little human moments like that I think make this movie fucking brilliant. The war scenes are great.
We also did talk about the Hanks de-escalating the scene with the prisoner of war and telling him he's a school teacher. Like, that's another great sequence, and sort of explains why you cast the actors you did. Is you needed this ability to be everyman, approachable, understandable, heroic, and then have these just like absolute, like, you know, you're going to spend 90 minutes just walking around and shooting, and then we just need you to show up in these 5 minutes and just nail a perfect story or nail a perfect scene and give the same Oscar caliber performance you would give it anything else. Zack,
let's go back to the Matt Damon.
Yeah, go. Mike's just losing into. I can't tell. I mean, hopefully, I don't know if the audience is going to capture, but we'll see.
Damn it.
All right, we're gonna.
God damn it.
Always fun. Always fun. It is either we have no problems or we have many problems, and
we still have to deal with this live, and he's gone.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is technically live because I'm not going to edit this. I'm too lazy. When Zack comes back, we'll continue. Do you have any other major sequences, characters you wanted to talk about, Mike? Anything we haven't touched on yet that you want to make sure you?
I think we like breezed over it a little bit, but the death of Goldberg's character is a very, like, even though it's by him, it's still a very emotional, probably the most emotional death other than Babisi's character. Because Babisi is just, he's calling out for his mom. He's really fucking terrified of dying while he's trying to tell him what to do to help him. But then the Goldberg one is him just begging for his fucking life while that knife is slowly coming further and further. And the dude is just telling him, shh, just basically let it happen. It's a brutal goddamn sequence.
It is, and especially because you also get the cut back and forth between Upham on the stairs, knowing something is up there, but like his cowardice really gets in the moment. And there's several moments throughout the film that you start, like, his cowardice is also really sewn really well into the plot of the story. You have all these moments where, like, he keeps falling behind people, or he's not running as, like, you know, straight into battle the way that everyone else is, you know. And it's also this interesting dynamic where it's like they don't necessarily judge him for his cowardice because there's sort of like an understanding that this is like a very human response to the situation. And he's the character that clearly has the least battle experiences. I mean, they even couch it at the beginning with this idea that, like, you know, he hasn't picked up a rifle since basic training. Why would he be the person who would be like gung-ho and charging at the enemy? It's a really effective sequence. I mean, they do a really good job in the final sequence being like, let's make sure we give a proper send up to these characters. All these characters matter. Like, they don't have a moment where it's just like, you know, a lot of times in war movies, you have the, like, you pick out the two characters you're going to focus on their death scenes. And then, like, you know, the other ones are just gunned down in some kind of montage sequence where, like, multiple characters get killed.
Yeah.
Or like, you know, or just like get shot randomly. Like the deaths are random in that they're not like, you know, nobody's hunting them intentionally. But like there's a brutality to the randomness, like the fact that Vin Diesel dies just because he basically just like he sticks his head out too far and gets shot. Like he's the person that gives them the idea that there's a sniper. Yeah. But even like they do such a good job like having a combination of an emotional response and like a strategic response. Like even when Diesel gets shot, like there's a moment where they're clearly all horrified, but they're also like, no, we need to. You go that way. Everybody get down.
Yeah.
Try to find him in the sniper. Can you figure out where he is? You know, there's all these moments where they're like really good about understanding the stakes and how they're going to solve the problem. Because in some ways, the movie is really just like a puzzle box where they're all trying to find Damon. And that's like kind of the goal at the end of the day is like, we need to find Matt Damon.
I think Burns finally gets his emotional moment at the end because he's fucking stone-faced throughout. He's the one military guy that goes, I can't form any attachment with these people because they're probably going to fucking die. So I'm going to be a dick throughout the entire movie until Hanks gets shot and is dying. And then you finally see it. You finally see Burns finally just he feels fucking terrible. Like throughout the whole thing, he's been giving him shit the entire fucking movie, and now he's dying right in front of him, and you finally see it in his face that he actually cares. He does actually care. He's not a complete psychopath.
Yeah, I mean, I think you see a lot throughout the movie that like characters have to put on a mentality. They have to put on like a face. They have to put a costume on. Like, I mean, some of it is just like you put on the attitude of a soldier while you're playing war. Like you have to figure out how to get through all these sequences. And for a lot of them, the only way to get through that is to like disassociate themselves and like act like no one else matters, because that way, if they lose those other people, it won't hurt as much in the moment. It looks like Zach's internet has gone out completely. So we're gonna, you and me are gonna finish this up in case the audience wonders why Zach has just disappeared. Do you have any final thoughts on Saving Private Ryan?
Overall, from majority of conversations I have with people about this movie, they always mention the Omaha Beach scene, and then they go, the rest of it doesn't hold up. And I'm like, that's bullshit. The Omaha Beach scene is fucking fantastic. I love it. But the entire movie is fucking incredible. And it's because of all those moments that we've talked about, all those human moments. And it looks like we got Zach back. Holy shit.
I got ice cream.
so, I mean, I don't know if Zach's internet actually crapped out or he just decided to get ice cream.
This is the quickest it's ever restarted. I'm very proud.
Nice. Mike, what were you going to say about
that all the human moments together all throughout the end make it a fantastic fucking movie. This is my favorite war film. I love it to death. It definitely holds a place there with that's why I love Band of Brothers too. I think Band of Brothers is incredible because both of them you can put together and they work off of each other so brilliantly. Yeah.
Zach, we were doing final thoughts. I don't remember where you were cut off. To eat ice cream like a child. Not even muting yourself. You're just gonna like chow down over there.
It's really cold. I will say what I was trying to say before everything went out. But
yeah, we lost most of it.
That's gonna be my final thoughts. And then I'm done. I'm gonna go back to my ice cream, and I will mute myself like a respectable human. Yeah, you hear the slurps.
Nobody wants to hear your slurps, Zach.
So, some people do.
Sarah's not here, Zach.
I don't know what that means. The Matt Damon speech at the end, and another reason why, even though I like hate him so much because that story is disgusting and rude and sexist, but why that story is so important is it reminds you that this is a kid, and it reminds you that it reminds Tom Hanks's character that is a kid and what he's like fighting for. Because that's a story a 19-year-old tells. It's this like naive, youthful story that someone who has experienced much more interesting or other things thinks is the most funny thing to happen in their life. And it's like, yeah, this person hasn't like had a chance to live out their story. And that reminds Tom Hanks what he's kind of fighting for is to preserve these futures for these people in a way.
I mean, picture a girl who just took a nosedive from the ugly tree and hit every branch coming down.
such an asshole story.
My favorite part of the story is when he's talking about his brother taking his shirt off and he's working on her bra, and then the other buddy yells, "Dan, you're a young man."
Right. But I think Tom Hanks is perfect in that scene because he's like humoring him to the right extent, but he definitely like sees through that story. It like does not care shit about what he's saying. He's giving him the right look. They're like, yeah, enjoy your moment.
But the way Damon plays it is so perfect, which is that it is not a funny story in the actual writing. You would not read that story and laugh hysterically. But it is classically the early 20s guy who tells a story that is not funny, but laughs so hysterically at the not funny story that you almost get sucked into it and make it a very and it's Matt Damon. He's one of the most charming actors of all time. So he sells that moment effectively well. I guess my final thoughts would be, I don't understand the argument that the beginning works and the rest doesn't. I honestly find that something I've realized over the last year is a lot of times when people make that argument, it's a very flawed one. Like, it was a movie that like Up was a movie for forever that I always thought fell into that category. And I rewatched it and I was like, it's going for very different things, but that first 10 minutes and the rest of the movie are equally valid. They're trying to do very different things, but you need both of them for the movie to function. It's not like I don't think you could chop off the opening sequence, the Omaha Beach sequence, and just be like, this is a great movie. And then like, because I mean, even Zach brought it up earlier. I don't agree with him. I agree it's hard to watch, but I think that's intention, the point, and the melding of the two parts of the movie is so important because the emotional response you have to the brutality and then like the more like grounded like teen stuff. I think you have to have them both in kind.
I still appreciate what that scene has to offer the rest of the movie. I just think that people are like, that's the kind of movie I want to watch, or crazy or insane people.
I mean, I love that scene, but it's also like, I don't just want the entire movie to be that scene.
Just because you brought up, the reason why the first 10 minutes of Up is good and the rest of it's not is because the first 2 minutes doesn't have a dumbass dog making dumbass dog jokes. That's the only thing.
Stop hitting on dogs, Zach. We get it. You're a cat guy.
Hey, you know what dogs are? They're distracted. So they just look at nothing and say squirrel. When there's no fucking squirrel in the middle of this fucking environment. It's not even a realistic joke. Dogs don't say squirrel, nothing. I'm saying. I'm done with my help.
Thank you, Dad. Yeah, Saving Private Ryan, I think the biggest thing is that it features all the hallmarks of Spielberg, for good and bad. You know, Spielberg is one of those people that I don't think he's objectively, any of his ticks are bad, but they are like, it's sort of your choice about how much you buy into the Spielberg essence and the way he makes films. But yeah, I think the biggest thing is this movie is expertly paced, flies by, works really effectively. I think it melds like the two. Zach is laughing at I don't know what he's laughing. Yeah, we're ignoring Zach for knowing. Yeah, just really a well-paced, good movie. Matt Damon is kind of perfect. He looks like the perfect American soldier. Yeah, Saving Private Ryan, a lot of fun. Zach, you know what this is?
I got worried that there's like eating fetishes that are just going to like watch me, watch me chew. So I tried to eat off camera.
God damn it,
Zach, you're not a girl, so I don't think that's gonna. I think it's like that.
Hey, fetish is fetish. Or anybody eating.
I'm just gonna say that. I'm just gonna like not to.
You say
not
females
to,
and also gay people can have fetishes as well.
I'm not shaming you, Zach. I'm just saying from
You're
my understanding.
Fans. You're shaming my audience.
I'm just saying from my understanding of the internet, it's the female YouTubers that have to worry about creepy comments and weird DMs and requests, not us. But yeah, Saving Private Ryan, a lot of great movie, really a lot of fun. Next week, we're going to come back and we're going to do Rounders, which is a return to Matt Damon as the lead. So far, I've been able to connect the first three movies to like big things in like what Damon is as a person. I'm not sure if I'll be able to do that with Rounders or the final film in our miniseries, but we'll still have a good time discussing it.
The final one's a big one, I think. Very important.
Yes, the final one is Rounders is the one I think that does not have a specific like tick in what Damon is now. I want to thank Mike for coming on and talking Spielberg.
Yeah, this has been fun. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, we invited you for an actual good Tom Hanks war film.
Yeah, you've been on for Greyhound and the Island of Dr.
And look at him! The Conjuring, the devil made me do it. Mike is really just like, I don't know, maybe it's unintentionally we're like, man, there's a bad movie. Let's get Mike on to talk about it.
It's true.
Yeah. Well, thank you for coming on. You're always one of our favorites. Yeah, next week, Rounders. That being said, if you are watching this on YouTube, like, subscribe, comment, say all the fun things. Specifically, do you agree with Zach and Mike that you like the book ending of old James Francis Ryan, or are you on my side and you wish that the entire movie took place in 1944?
And more importantly, do you think Robin Williams in Good Will Hunting is a genius? Please email us. Thank you.
Yes, yes, Mike, you're not going to do. Zach and me got a long, extended argument about whether or
40
not
minutes of the Good Will Hunting episode. That's us fighting about whether he's a genius or not.
Yes, we got into an argument about who are geniuses and who are not.
Semantics.
It was a very, very Zach and I argument, if we're being honest. Yeah, if you're on the audio platforms, give us a rating, give us a review, give us fun stuff. Yeah, next week, Rounders. Good night, folks.
Goodbye. I love you. Good ends.